Hello and welcome to another video session of Godfred Yaka. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos. I was actually doing this to help a friend out online on the internet. She wanted to connect other computers on the network to an SQL server, to a database that is developed, but didn't know how to enable the SQL server to accept connections from other computers on the network. So the project is looking at you being a personnel in your firm and you are required to deploy a .NET application that connects to an Microsoft or MS SQL server on the network. So objective is to configure the server to be accessible on the network to client computers. So we assume that this is your server computer or your database server, and then your client computers are here on the network. So to achieve this particular task, what we would do is, one, we would create a database. So I can launch it for you to see. We'll create a database within my SQL server itself. So I launch my console and then I create my database. But before you do this, or as you create your database, you should make your server accessible to the network. So we could do them one after the other. It doesn't matter which comes first. So we just create our database. So I enter my password to my database server here. Okay, now it connects to my database, and then I just give it some few seconds. So this is a pool of databases I have. So for instance, I could right click here and say I'm creating a new database. So because we are just going to learn how to establish the connection, I'll just give it a simple name, maybe X, try it yourself. That's the name of our database. So I click OK. And now it creates the database for us. Now our objective is not to do a complete database, so we won't be creating our tables, queries, and the like. So the next thing you would want to do is make sure you look for the server configuration manager, the SQL server configuration manager. So you launch this particular application, and then you ensure that you enable the name pipes or the TCPIP. So when you come to the server, there are lots of services running. There's the native client, the SQL server configuration 32-bit, but we need the SQL server network configuration for this. So under protocols, you would select name pipes. If it is disabled, you turn it to maybe yes. So if it is, you ensure that it is on yes to make sure it's enabled. Then on name pipes, you do the same. Now once you do that, you would want your client computers to point to a specific IP address on your server. So you can come to the TCP stroke IP under addresses. Then you enter the IP address of your database server. So once you enter that IP address here, you could use this particular IP address in your connection string. So in our case, you can either use the IP address, or you would use the computer name, that is the host name. So it will respond to either the IP address or the computer name. So in this particular case, my computer name is Ton. So I'm going to use Ton within my configuration, and then we would see. So I have my simple connection string here. Now I have used Ton here, that is my host name, which is Ton, and then the database I created is X, try it yourself. Then the user ID, I want to use the default user ID, and then you set a password for your SQL server during your installation. So I'm going to use this particular connection string. I have copied it, and under say Visual Studio, so if I come to Visual Studio, I have just a form and a button. Now before I do that, I want to create a simple module that will link me up to the a simple module that will hold my connection string. So I can just pick a default module there, and then I create a variable. I create a public variable that will hold my connection string, the path to my database. So before I do that, because I'm going to use the SQL server, I would have to import the library that supports it. So I would say imports system .data .sql client. So once I do this, I have imported, or I have brought in this particular namespace. That is a SQL data library, client data library. So now I can then come and say public, say x data con. That is my connection string. I'm just choosing this name for my connection string. So public x data con as new, maybe SQL connection or something. So SQL connection. So remember, I have already copied my connection string from there, so I am just simply going to paste my connection string, what I copied from the notepad. So you should know, in my other videos I explain what the connection string is. It's usually that path to your database is split in two. That is the source of the database, and then the name and authentication to the database. So the source describes the path. We could replace the host name, the ton, by maybe the IP address of this particular computer. It should still work. So once we have that, we come to the form. Now we want to find out if there is a connection established to my SQL server. So I would want to import the namespace, the library here. So imports system.data.sql client, and then I would say, okay, if there is a path to my database, what I want to do is I want it to display a message that connection established. So I would say xdata con.open. Because I made it a public variable, it's supposed to see it from anywhere through. Because I made it a public variable, I expect to see it. So I say import system dot, oops, I am not within the namespace, that is why the error. So let's remember to bring it here, then I declare it here instead. So now I say maybe MSG box, say connection established, right? And then I close my connection. So maybe x datacon dot close. So once I run my application and it's able to locate the database via that particular path, it should bring a message connection established. Otherwise, there should be an error. So when I click, what happens? Connection established. It means it has been able to pass through this particular path within my module, or this particular path here, so that you can see it well. It has been able to pass through this particular path, maybe the ton, using the authentication to reach this particular database here that we've just created. Extra it yourself. Now this is within the normal computer I'm using. So let's find out if we can actually connect to this particular database from another computer. So I'm going to do a remote desktop connection to another computer I have on my network. Then we'll try to establish a connection from its management console to this particular computer's console. Remember, I told you this computer is named Ton. So we are going to connect to Ton. Now I'm establishing a connection to another computer somewhere. So you can see clearly I am not on my computer, I'm on another server somewhere. I can minimize the remote connection. You see I am within this computer. Now on the remote server, there is an SQL management studio here, and then I establish connection. So instead of connecting to the local host on this computer, I want to connect to Ton, that particular computer I have on my network named Ton. So I erase here and I name it Ton. Oops, hold on. Let's connect to the local host and see if we would find our database. Try it yourself. So this particular setup, or this particular management studio, connects to the local host here, this particular computer's setup. So we don't see the try it yourself database here. So I disconnect this and then I connect to Ton. Then we'll see if we can find it. Now, this was the local host, so I used Windows authentication to log on, but because I'm connecting to a network database engine or server, I need to choose SQL Server authentication, and then I enter my password. So once I enter my password, I expect to find X try it yourself here. That means I have succeeded in establishing a connection between this particular computer and then my server computer at the other side. So I can manipulate the database here. Of course, it should now give me the chance to write my application and then deploy it on the network, and then it will work very well. Thank you for participating, and please remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos. Bye.